There was a kingdom, and in this kingdom one day, there appeared a great giant outside its walls. The whole of this kingdom was terrified by this giant, and nobody could leave this kingdom for a long while. Then one day, a little girl came to the gate of this kingdom, opened it, and went out. The giant was huge, head taller than the sky. And as this little girl moved towards this giant, the giant got smaller and smaller. By the time the girl got to the presence of this giant, the giant had got so small, it was a tiny little thing. The girl picked up this little thing, put him in the palm of her hand and said, "What's your name?" And the little thing said, "Fear." Now that's a story that I could elaborate for a whole hour, but I've told it in about a minute and a half. What do you think is the oldest technology in the world? Give me a couple of answers, please. The oldest technology in the world. Language? Anybody else? The oldest technology. What was that? Fire. Anybody else? Drawing. Well, I contend that the oldest technology in the world is storytelling. We tell stories to ourselves as a way of making sense of reality. Storytelling doesn't require necessarily the telling of it to somebody else. Storytelling is something that happens inside our consciousness all the time. This entire conference that you've attended is one gigantic act of multiple stories. You all have your individual stories that you're living out, but you're also in a great sea of stories. I'm going to read to you some thoughts that I want to share with you, particularly about the nature, the power, and the mystery of storytelling. Storytelling is the most prevalent technology of the human mind. We are storytelling beings, Homo fabula. It is curious how science speaks to people when it resolves into story. Einstein made relativity accessible by the story of two people on a train on a platform. Darwin gave us a new narrative of evolution, not as compelling as that of the Bible, but compelling enough to make us think about it for over 100 years. Archimedes and his bath told us more about displacement than any formula could do. The truth is that data and experiments of science, the findings, tend towards narrative. And it is an axiom of science that the most satisfying narrative that data tells, the most beautiful, is the one favored by the scientific community. They had us gripped with the search for the Higgs boson. And maybe one of the greatest narratives of our time is the IT explosion, which enabled 1,000 stories to be told, freeing individuals from the tyranny of voicelessness. Data is not neutral. We are always asking data to tell us something, to reveal something. And what we ask data to reveal to us is story, is some kind of narrative, to give shape or form to some question or enigma. There could be no science without story. Think about it. Think about a science so pure that it added nothing whatever to the human condition. Think of a science that dwelt in perfect abstraction, without questions, without a quest for solutions. Anything that tends towards a future tends towards story. Anything that bends from the past bends into story. Story is the primal arch of the human condition. You would not think that science and story are inextricably linked. But science, even in its experiments, its hypotheses, its analysis, is of the fundamental condition of story. Story might seem to some to be falsification, myth in the worst sense of the word. But story follows a path of truth. Its truth is often secret, hidden, appealing to a sense of symmetry and beauty that we associate unconsciously with truth. How often have you heard the phrase, an elegant solution, an elegant formula? It is simply not possible to make sense of our experience or our science without that storytelling sense embedded in our consciousness. Everything we do follows the river path of story. The mind, by its very nature, is a story-producing organ. When we prevent things from yielding story, we prevent them being comprehensible to us. This story-making faculty of ours is of evolutionary importance. Our stories shape our past. We think our pasts are fixed. Actually, our pasts are as mutable as our perception. Our stories shape our future. We think our future is unmade, but our future is shaped by the secret matrix of story. You tell me the stories a people tell about themselves. You tell me the stories people tell themselves, and I will tell you what kind of people they are and what kind of people they might become. The stories we tell and live are matrices of our deepest selves. In our stories are blueprints of our future, revelations of our past. Our secret stories have brought us here, now, to this place. You think stories are fictions, harmless, but stories are shapers of time. Stories affect reality. In time, stories become a reality. Reality is tenuous. It is malleable. It is fluid. It is mysterious. Even the great scientists will tell you that they don't have a grip on reality. Reality is all the imponderable factors, the accidents, the deaths, the vectors of events, the obscure shape of fate, the mysterious hand of destiny. In the face of the vast reality, we stand helpless. Today we are fine, we're perfect, we're happy. Tomorrow, who knows? The world is vaster than we are. We strive to master the data, but the infinite flow of life, with its secret causes and effects, happens all around us and inside us. It is only our storytelling sense that can work with this immeasurable data of life. We need, in our different disciplines, to understand the morphology and the power of stories. For through story, we connect the great flow of the human condition. Nations, corporations, individuals compel our attention as much through the story they tell as through the things they do. To pay no attention to the story that your discipline tells or fails to tell is not to engage with the deep core of people. It is to act isolated from the real world. Steve Jobs interests us not only for the work he did with Apple, but mainly for the story his life told and continues to tell. The mind gravitates towards story. Where no story is told, the mind remains uninterested. I tell my students a curious fact about writing. I say the mind likes to create. Whether it is creating patterns, meanings, coherence, or even incoherence, the mind is fundamentally creative. My question to you today is this: what story will you take away from your time here? Because the story you take with you is all you have learned or done here. What have you grasped? What have you unlearned? What have you revealed to yourself? We're not much more than the stories we live, the stories we tell ourselves, the stories the shape of our lives make against the great fabric of life. What story do you live with? What new story has your life begun here? A company lives or dies by its stories. We are interested in you because your story lives and compels. Only those who understand the strange power of stories and how they change reality can initiate, like enchanters, an age of magic. But to true storytellers, it is always an age of magic. It's just that most of us don't notice. I'm going to read you one or two aphorisms from an essay of mine called The Joys of Storytelling. In the beginning, there were no stories. That fragment is a story. The universe began as a story. Magic becomes art when it has nothing to hide. The higher the artist, the fewer the gestures. I'm going to end by reading you two sentences from my new book, The Age of Magic. Reality can be altered by the mind. All it takes is the right magic, the right attitude. Whoever knows this secret never fails. Whoever understands the mysterious power of stories, how they affect our consciousness, how they shape the times in which we live, never fails. Bless you all, and thank you.